All right, guys, it's 17:01, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, welcome to the class. Especially a nice welcome to those of you who are not in the uni. We're glad that we can offer these classes all around. So, yes, thank you very much for coming. This class will not have an out-in-space day, so all of you guys can be docked up. We'll be teaching the class in two different places. The class will be in Mumble in this channel, so let me post that in lecture.e-uni just so people there know. And we will be also teaching this class in lecture.e-uni. So if any of you are in class.e-uni, you need to make your way over to lecture.e-uni. So if you can hear me and you're in lecture.e-uni, give me a quick wave. Yay! All right, so looks like we've got a nice big crowd for the class this morning. If you guys have any questions as we go along, please feel free to type them in lecture.e-uni. Since this is on the public Mumble server, not everybody can talk in Mumble. And so any questions that you have, please feel free to interrupt in the middle and just type them out in lecture.e-uni and we'll go from there. It looks like Intilza, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that name, is going to be recording for us, so that's good. So let's go ahead and get started. The very first thing that we're going to cover today, before we actually go on to EFT, which is a fitting program, Pyfa, which is another fitting program, and EVEmon, which is a skill plan program, we're first going to talk about an API. So does anybody know what an API is? Yes, so it's an application program interface. It's basically the way that Eve can communicate data about your character to third-party programs in a standardized way. So CCP, the company that makes Eve, has set up a protocol by which third-party programs can go and get some information about your character if you choose to provide it to those programs. You guys had to provide an API key to the uni to get in. Other corporations will ask the same thing, that you need to provide an API key to get in. And these are not only used by people sort of checking out to see if you're a spy, but you can also use them in third-party programs to get information about your character and better optimize what's going on. So what I'm going to recommend is that if you guys want to use EFT and Pyfa and EVEmon, that you go ahead and set yourself up an API key. So here's how you do that. First thing that you're going to do is you're going to go to support.eveonline.com, and from there you can click on API Key Management. It'll be over on the left side. That'll redirect you weirdly, but then you can click on the support link up at the top bar and go to API Key Management. And this gives an explanation of what an API key is, how you can use it, and what I would do for each of these third-party programs. I would create one API key so that you have one API key you can send to all of your third-party programs. So you'll see a little button that says Create New API Key. So again, I've posted the link in lecture.e-uni where we are. And you can create a new API key. You give it a name, you tell it what character you want to attach it to, or you can tell it to attach it to all of the characters on your account. And then what I would do is I would select everything. Be very careful. You don't want to give this API key information to anybody. You just keep it for yourself. But this way, all of the third-party programs we're going to be talking about today can pull information about your character and best optimize what's going on. So again, if you pull up this API key and you select all, eventually what it's going to do is all of the little boxes are going to turn yellow. Once you do that, you hit submit, and then you will get two parts to the API key. You will get a key ID, so that'll be 7 numbers, and then you'll get a verification code, which is a very, very long password. Either have this API key tab open in a browser as we're working today, or write down those numbers or copy them over to Notepad or something so that you can work with them later. These API keys are going to allow programs like EVEmon to say, oh, this character is researching this skill right now, and he just completed it. That opens up other skills for him to train. Or it'll allow a program like EFT to see your exact skills and tell you whether or not you can fly a particular ship and what skills you can improve to be more effective in that ship. So customizing these third-party programs with your API is a big part of what makes them useful. We good there? Does anybody have any questions about API keys before we move on? Do you know of an app that is equivalent for Mac? Pyfa will work just perfectly on Mac. I owned, before I got the computer that I'm working on now, I had a Mac laptop for many years and I played EVE on it for a while. Pyfa will work just perfectly on Mac, but as for EVEmon, I had to spend about a week researching how to get EVEmon open in Wine, and I didn't really get it to work. Rektar is suggesting something else, GTK EVEmon, which I don't know anything about personally, but he says it works, so that might be a recommendation there. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with EVEmon of the two. So EVEmon, and again, the links to all of these are posted in the forum thread, so let me relink that really quickly. EVEmon is a skill management program. When you open up the program for the first time, you're going to see basically nothing because you haven't imported any characters into it. So the first thing that you're going to need to do when you start up EVEmon is either create a blank character just to test skill plans on, or to import your API key information. So when you open up EVEmon, if you click on File, Add API Key, that will allow you to import an API key associated with a particular account. Now, if you set it up where it's associated just with a particular character on that account, that's the only information you're going to be able to pull. But if you set it up so that the API key pulls all of the characters on that account, you'll be able to import the information about all of those characters into your program. So again, once you enter your API key and its verification code, so your API ID and then your API verification code, then you will start to see information begin to be populated about your character. Once we click on a character, it'll bring up a screen that will show you the name of the character's wallet balance, the birthday of the character, the corporation, security status, all of this really useful information right there in the basic screen. Over on the right side, you can see how many skills you know. You can see how many skills you have at level 5, total skill points, and the clone limit. So if any of you know anything about medical clones, you'll know that your medical clone, until you update it, only carries a certain amount of skill point information. If you get potted in that clone, you lose a percentage of skill points in the difference between how much your clone can take and how many skill points you had. One of the best parts about EVEmon is that it will remind you if any of your characters have an out-of-date clone, so that you can update that clone. Right below the character portrait and all of that information, you'll see a little row of buttons. Over on the far right side, there will be a button that has a downward black arrow, and you can say what of the particular information tabs you want to enable. So you'll have things like standings, where you can, if you API key the information to pull standings, then you can check your standings right here from a third-party program without having to log into Eve. You can check your contacts, so you can check things like faction warfare if you participate in faction warfare. Everything from industry to research jobs to your particular contracts that are going on. So there's a lot of information that you can get to in EVEmon just purely to look at information. So those things are very useful. But to me, the real benefit of using EVEmon is the skill planning. So I'm going to assume that there are a lot of you in this class who have never used EVEmon before. Actually, how many of you are now working with EVEmon? You've downloaded it, but you have never used it before today? Okay, we have 2 people. How many of you have been using EVEmon for a while, but don't really know how to get a lot of stuff out of it? Okay, and how many of you feel like you're really experts at EVEmon? Okay, that is about half of the people who are in Mumble. So Captain Jack says that's a big leap from the previous choice. Sure. So I just wanted to get a sense for who, and how many of you have not even downloaded it, you just want to get this for kind of a conceptual overview of what's going on. Wow, so that's a pretty balanced split. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about EVEmon then from the perspective of someone who maybe hasn't used it a whole lot before. And this will be good for those people who have never used it before. So one of the things that you can do in EVEmon is create a skill plan. So make sure you have whatever character selected that you want to select and hit Plans, New Plan. This is the point at which you can enter a name for that plan. It doesn't really matter what the name is, but this will give you a way to start setting up a plan for a particular purpose. The way that I like to work with EVEmon is I have one plan that I know I'm going to stick to for right now. And then I have a bunch of other sub-plans to say, oh, if I wanted to train into this particular ship, I could start training this plan today. If I wanted to train into a perfect Harbinger pilot with Tech 2 guns and all of that good stuff, here are the skills that I would need to train to get into that ship. So somebody pick me a capital ship that we want to train into today. Can be any capital ship. All right, so Duke says, let's train for a Moros. So make the name of your skill plan Moros. And once you name your skill plan, then you get a big new window that says your character's name and the name of the skill plan. And the first tab that you will go to is the skill browser. And this is a place where you can take a look at all of the possible skills that you could train in EVE. It has them listed under tabs, but you can also take a look at them via attributes and a variety of different sorting methods at the top left. So let's start out very simply. I want to be able just to sit in a Moros. I don't want to be able to fire any of the guns. I don't want to be able to use any of the modules. I just want to be able to undock in a Moros. Well, EVEmon has a great way to do that. Click on Ship Browser. In the top row of tabs, you'll see Plan Queue, Skill Browser, Certificates, Ship Browser, and type in Moros. Now, you'll see that the Moros will come up and it will give you a lot of information about the ship. This is a very useful and valuable tool to have. But it will also give you down at the bottom a required skills. So if you look in the bottom right corner, you'll see the required skills for that ship. And it gives you a convenient little button that says Add All to Plan. Now, this will bring up a little window where it says the following entries will be added, and it will give you a variety of different things. Now, you can add these with a particular priority. Normally, when you input skills into an EVEmon plan, you'll be able to sort them in a variety of different methods. Sometimes you want to sort them by the amount of time that it's going to take to train them. Sometimes you want to sort them by your attributes. This will allow you to sort them by a priority level. So the highest priority you can set for something is 1. The lowest priority, I think, is 5 or 6. But if you said, oh, I really want to get this particular thing done first, and then I can do these other things, you can very quickly sort by priority if you want to. By default, EVEmon will sort by the order in which you put things into the plan. And EVEmon is really good about maintaining prerequisite order. So you won't be able to put something before its prerequisite. So let's go ahead and add all of those to our skill plan. Now, if you go and click on the Plan Queue tab, you'll be able to see there are all of my skills. So we have Spaceship Command, Advanced Spaceship Command 5, Capital Ships, Galente Battleships, Weapon Upgrades, Advanced Weapon Upgrades, Tactical Weapon Reconfiguration. I'm not really sure what that is, right? So if you don't know what a skill is, what you can do is click on the window and hover over that skill, and it'll give you a description. So we can see that this tactical weapon reconfiguration is the skill that we need in order to go into siege mode in our Moros. It seems like an important skill to have, right? So now if you click on that skill, if you right-click on that skill, you'll see a variety of different options. So I want you to go ahead and right-click on Tactical Weapon Reconfiguration and go to Show in Skill Browser. This opens up our Skill Browser tab. That's our second tab over there over in the top area. So we can see that Tactical Weapon Reconfiguration is a gunnery skill. It is a level 8 skill. It's a skill that takes 8 times as much to train as a level 1 skill. So if you look on your little left column there of all of the possible skills in gunnery, you'll see that some of them are just level 1 skills, like gunnery, for example. But the farther you get into specialization, the more you're going to be getting into level 5 up to level 16 skills, if I'm not mistaken, is what you need for a Titan. Yes, any of the Titan skills. So for example, if you wanted to train Galente Titan, that would be a 16 times skill. Cool. So if we look at our gunnery skill and we look at tactical weapon reconfiguration, we can see that we need gunnery 5, weapon upgrades 5, advanced weapon upgrades 5 in order just to get to tactical weapons reconfiguration. And then once we've gotten there, it might be the case that this enables some things. This enables not only some skills, but it enables some modules. So if you click in the top right corner where it says show what this skill enables, it'll open it in the Skill Explorer, which is a different way to look at it. So you'll see this opens up a new window that says Skill Explorer. What is this skill used for? And so you'll see that Tactical Weapon Reconfiguration 1 enables you to fly it's one of the skills required to fly any of the 4 dreadnoughts. So again, this won't show you all of the prerequisites for being able to fly a Mark, Eldari, Galente, or Minmatar, but you'll see that it is one of the skills required. Then we can look over on the right side and see the enabled items. So if we train Tactical Weapon Reconfiguration to 1, we'll be able to use Siege Module level 1. But let's be honest, we want to be a really good Moros pilot, which means that we need a Tech 2 Siege Module. Trust me on that one. So we can see that in order to get a Tech 2 Siege Module, we need to train it to 5. Okay, well that's probably going to be a long train, but that's alright. So close that window and go back to your Skill Browser window where we had Tactical Weapons Reconfiguration open. Up in the top left corner, you can see that currently it says plan to level 1. Well, we want to plan it to level 5. So we're going to click on that and drop down and plan it to level 5. So now you'll see if you go back to the first tab, if you go back to your plan queue, you'll see now at the bottom of the skill plan, we have Tactical Weapon Reconfiguration planned to 5. Well, that level 5 is a long train. Depending on your implants and your remap, it could be as much as 35 or 40 days. So that's going to be a long train, right? But it's important for getting into our ship. Now, how do I know how long it is? Well, if we look at this plan queue, we can see a lot of different attributes that are going to tell us all manner of things about these skills. So if you click on the little gear up at the top right corner that says Preferences, you can open up a window that says Column Settings, and you can put check marks next to all of the columns that you want to see. You definitely want to see the skill name, right? You definitely want to see what skill you're training. You definitely want to see the training time. You might want to see the plan group. I like to have earliest start and earliest end. It sort of gives me a sense for not only how long is it going to take to train each individual skill, but when am I going to get to particular skills? When are they going to start? When are they going to end? I also like to see the estimated skill point total. So that's going to be over on the near the bottom of that. I like to see how much skill points am I going to have at each point down the road, so I know kind of when I'm going to need to update a medical clone. I also love to have skill points per hour. If you are used to using remaps, then skill points per hour will let you know whether or not you're being effective within your remap. So for instance, if you have lots of things that are sitting around, maybe 1,600 skill points per hour, you might not be using your remap and using your implants as effectively as you might be otherwise. Anything over about 2,200, 2,300 is going to be average to good. And based on where you have remapped your skills and what kind of implants you have in, something around 2,500 is going to be great. The rule of thumb that I heard is if you're training between 20 and 22 million skill points a year, you're doing it right. And of course, that's going to depend on how much you use clean clones for PvP, what kind of learning implants that you're going to be able to afford, and all of those kinds of things. But 20 million skill points per year is going to be something good to shoot for. Okay, so now we can sit in our Moros hull, and now we can get a Tech 2 Siege module. But that's not the only module we're going to want to have on our ship. Does anybody know what kind of guns a Moros uses? Well, Moros is a Galente hull, so it's probably going to use blasters or railguns, right? Does anybody know what size? Right, Tasu is right. It uses capital-sized guns. So how about we go over and look in the item browser? So this is up at the top bar again. We can go and look in the item browser, and let's go look for ship equipment. So all turrets are going to be listed under ship equipment. Go to turrets and bays. Go to hybrid turrets, blasters, and this is going to be extra large. Jetstream asks, I accidentally clicked the name column and reordered it. If you click it again, it'll reorder it in the opposite direction, and then if you click it a third time, it'll get rid of the ordering on that particular column. So it cycles through order ascending or descending, order the other one, descending or ascending, and then order normally again. So we're going to go for extra large guns. So let's click on Ion Siege Blaster Cannon 1. That sounds like fun, right? I want to be able to fly that. That sounds like great fun. So once we take a look at these guns, we can see a variety of different attributes about the guns. But again, like before with our ship browser, there's a button over at the bottom right corner that says, these are the required skills to fly with this particular module. I want it. Add all to plan. So we're going to go ahead and click that button and add all of these skills to the plan. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is, unlike before, you'll see a little next to Gunnery 5 if you don't have that skill already, because it's in your plan queue. If you've already trained Gunnery 5, then it'll have a little check mark next to it, which says, great, you can fly this particular module. So again, let's add all of those entries to our plan and go back and look at our plan queue. So now we have capital hybrid turret to 1. Well, as anybody will tell you, you're not going to be super effective with your turret skill just at 1, firing that particular kind of guns. And if we hover over the skill, we can see that capital hybrid turret 1, or capital hybrid turret, the skill, gives us a 5% damage bonus per level of the skill. So we want that one to 5. So you're going to right-click on the skill, and you're going to go to the little thing that says Change Planned Level, and you're going to make that at 5. So now what you should see on your skill plan is that you have a bunch of different skills planned. They're going to take a bunch of different time, and down at the bottom, it'll show you how many skills you have planned in that particular plan, how long it's going to take you to train all of those skills, and the amount of ISK that's required to buy the skill books for that particular plan. Okay, so we can fly our weapons, we can fly our ship, we can use our siege module. Does anybody know how a Moros is tanked? Do we use an armor tank for a Moros or a shield tank for a Moros? I'm guessing Galente because it's armor because it's Galente. That would be a correct assumption. The vast majority of Moros are going to be armor tanked, supported by armor tanked carrier Logi. So let's go ahead and make sure that we can use an armor tank. So now we're going to go over to one of the only tabs we haven't gotten yet, the certificates tab. So the certificates tab is going to show you all of the certificates that show up in game. These are the exact same certificates in the game. So let's go to defense. And let's go to armor tanking, because we want to be able to have all of the skills we need, not only to fit a Tech 2 armor tank, but also to use that Tech 2 armor tank to its fullest. So if you click on any of these certificates, let's click on armor tanking, for example, it'll show you the various different levels of that certificate. For armor tanking, there are 4 levels: basic, standard, improved, and elite. And it will show you the amount of time that you need to get to any of these skill levels. If you have the certificates already, it'll give you a green check. If you are working toward the certificate, it'll give you a little orange circle. And if you don't have any of the skills required to be at a particular level already, you'll have a red X. So again, we want to be the best Moros pilot we can be, right? So let's get Armor Tanking Elite. If you click on the little plus box next to Armor Tanking Elite, you'll see all of the certificates and skills that you'll need to get that certificate. So in order to get Armor Tanking Elite, we need Armor Tanking Improved, and we need Armor Reinforcement Elite. Again, if you click on the plus next to Armor Tanking Improved, you'll see the skills and certificates you need to get to that point. If you already have particular skills planned, it will show them with a little skill book next to it. And if you already have them, it'll give you the green check mark as well. And you can delve into this, and a lot of ships in the game will come with certificates that are recommended for flying those ships well. So you can go through these certificates not as a be-all, end-all by any means. These are not the be-all, end-all of how you should make your skill plans, but they are good starting points to see what you need to get. For example, if you look at this Armor Reinforcement Elite, the 4 skills that are required are EM Armor Compensation 5, Explosive Armor Compensation 5, Kinetic, and Thermic. Can anybody tell me why those might be diminishing return trains in real life? Or not in real life, but in the game itself, as opposed to just in theory crafting? Well, those compensation skills in particular do not work with active modules. Duke says the higher you go, the less benefit you get. That's part of it, but mostly for these kinds of ships, you're going to be using more active tanking modules. So you're going to be using an armor hardener as opposed to an armor plate. So it's still useful to get these skills perhaps up to 4, but it might not be useful to get them all the way up to 5 unless you really, really need it. So how about let's go ahead and say we want the armor tanking improved certificate. So what you'll see right below the little window at the top is something that says, after this plan, you will be eligible to a particular level. And then it will tell you whether this is no change from what you have right now, or if it's an improvement from what you have right now. So right next to that, it has plan 2, ... So let's go ahead and plan our armor tanking to improved. And now it should say your armor tanking is planned to improved from basic. Cool. So if we go back over to our plan queue, we can see now we have a variety of different armor tanking skills sitting at the bottom. Do we have any questions up to this point? Cool. So again, these are some of the more straightforward things that you can do with a skill plan. But let's say you wanted to build a skill plan for the next 2 years, and it isn't just about getting ready for one ship, the Moros, but you want to be able to fly logistics, and you want to be able to fly an assault frigate, and you want to be able to get that hull tanking certificate that everybody really wants to get, the hull tanking elite certificate. And you want to be getting all of these other skills that you need for in the game. And so you've built yourself 2 years worth of a skill plan. Now how can EVEmon help you? Well, what you can do is you can plan remaps from within a skill plan. So let's just take a look at what would happen if we did that with our Moro skill plan. It's not going to be that useful with our Moro skill plan. Can anybody tell me why? Why would a remap not be useful for this Moro skill plan? Does anybody know how many remaps do you get per year? Until it gives me the right answer. It's a year of training, so if you planned a remap right in the middle, you would have to be using a bonus remap for this plan. But we had a question from Andra, and Andra asks, if I planned, i.e. from a certificate too high, is there any way that I can easily undo it? Yes. Right there in that certificate, you can go back and say, I just want to plan it to standard. Oh, it won't let you do it right from there. It will let you do that from skills themselves. So for instance, if we go over to our plan queue, and we right-click on Capital Hybrid Turret, we can change the planned level of Capital Hybrid Turret just to whatever we wanted. But as for the particular certificates, I don't know that there's a way to go through and remove all of them other than just doing it one by one. But you can do it from individual skills. So if I wanted to get rid of advanced weapon upgrades, it would tell me, okay, but by getting rid of advanced weapon upgrades 1, you're also going to be getting rid of tactical weapon reconfiguration, and by doing that, you're also going to be getting rid of Galente Dreadnought. So you see the ramifications of leaving a skill rather high up on your skill plan. Okay, so let's go back to remaps. Let's say that I'm silly and I want to use a bonus remap 2 months through my skill plan. So everybody click on navigation, whatever level of navigation you have there that's required for jump drive operation. And then click the little button over on the left side that looks like 2 little blue bars. Does everybody see where that is? This will put a remapping point into the middle of your skill plan. Now, once you first put that in your skill plan, it'll say remapping, not computed. So it hasn't determined what remap is going to be best for what you have going forward from here. So if we double click on it, it will automatically give us an optimized remap for the first year below that remapping point. So if we double click, it's going to give us remapping point manual editing. Now on this, we'll see all of our implants over on the right side, but we'll also see our 5 different categories of skill points: intelligence, perception, charisma, willpower, and memory. And it'll tell you what's the best remap for what comes after this. It'll tell you what the current time is. It'll tell you what the time is with the new attributes that you have set up, and it'll tell you the difference between them. For me, it would only be a 1-day benefit to train all of the skills past that with the new remaps as opposed to the old remaps. But for things where you want to plan into a particular ship, sometimes it might be nice not to get a remap halfway through, but to get a remap right at the very beginning. So go ahead and close out of that one. You can right-click the remapping point and remove it from the plan, and then you can go up to the very top of your window, click on the very first skill that you have, and then hit the remap button, the 2 little bar button over on the left side. So now we've added a remap right at the very beginning of our plan. So if we had a year-long train to get into Amoros, we could say, okay, when I start this train, these are the attributes that I want to have to get into this particular ship. So those are some of the things that you can do within a skill plan. If you go up to optimize attributes, up at the top corner, this is another way to see what the best attributes would be for the first year of a particular plan without manually adding the remap point at the very beginning. Also up at the top bar, you're going to see an implant calculator. This is really useful to just mess around with your implants and see, am I really going to get a bonus in this skill train from having a +5 charisma implant? Spoiler alert, you won't have any benefit at all because none of these skills have a primary or a secondary attribute that is charisma. So you can save yourself a lot of money by not buying implants that you won't need for a particular plan. Cool. Does anybody have any questions up to this point? Okay, I will take that as a no. One of the last things that we're going to talk about in EVEmon is how to combine plans. So let's say that you want to be able to fly a Guardian perfectly, but you also want to be able to fly a Legion perfectly. So you set up 2 separate skill plans for a Guardian and a Legion. Now, one might think that there are going to be some things that are going to overlap in those 2 skill plans. Can anybody think of what skill would be required for flying both a Guardian and a Legion that would be overlapping in those 2 skill plans? Right, Duke gets it right off the bat. Amar Cruiser 5 is required for flying either one of those ships. So you wouldn't want to duplicate it, and you also would want to put it early so that you can get both of the other skills that you need. So what you can do is if you close out of a skill plan and go back to your character in EVEmon, so we're going back to the main window, you can click on the plans section at the very top and go to manage plans. So this will show you very quickly the name of your plans, the estimated completion time to any of them, the amount of skills, and the description that you've put in. So let's say I had a plan that was Legion, and I had a plan that was Guardian. I could click on those 2, and again you can control-click to select more than one, and right-click and say Merge. And this will allow you to blend 2 plans together, and it will also let you say, I want to fly the Legion first, and then I want to be able to fly the Guardian, or vice versa. So it'll prioritize the skills of one or the other first. Cool. Anybody have any questions on that? Awesome. So that is our coverage of EVEmon. Does anybody have any questions on EVEmon before we leave? Because there are plenty of other things that you can do in EVEmon, but I also want to be able to get to our fitting programs. So if you get a chance, I would highly recommend that you go through and take a look at all of the fun settings that you have in EVEmon. There's a really cool character comparison. So if you have a main and an alt that you both want to be able to fly the same ships, you'll see what skills one has that the other doesn't and kind of even them out a little bit if you want to. There are really good ways to prioritize skill plans based on primary and secondary attributes that will allow you to optimize your remap points and things like that. But more than anything, it's just a great way to build skill plans and to get them set up and correctly. Cool. So let's take a 5-minute break. Go get some water, go get whatever you need to get. And then when we come back at 1750 Eve, we will get started on EFT and Pyfa. I'll be getting water, but you guys can ask me questions about anything at this point in the 5 minutes before we start back. Anything Eve related. Yeah, FizzGum, it's really, really useful. The thing that I would warn everybody about is not to use your remaps quickly. Wait to see if you can, because here's the thing. You might say today, oh God, I really, really, really want to fly a Legion. But then you get a month into a 10-month skill train, and you say, oh, well, actually, I really don't want to fly the Legion because it's not as great as I thought it was at what I want to do. So maybe instead I want to fly a Loki, or I want to fly a Proteus. Then you can just save your remaps until you really know that you're sticking to a skill plan. For me right now, I'm training a bunch of support skills and spaceship command skills. I'm just finishing Covert Ops 4. I'm about to start Amar Cruiser 5 so that I can get myself into both an Oneros and a Guardian, and then I'm going to be training Logi 5. But I've stuck to my plan now for 3 months, so I'm happy that I went ahead and decided to use a remap. But I wasted a remap pretty early, so I had to use one of my bonus remaps. You get 2 bonus remaps ever, and you get 1 standard remap per year, and it'll tell you in-game when you get those. Andra, I don't know that I would say you shouldn't remap at all in the first year, but I would say that I would stick with a skill plan for at least a month, if not a month and a half, before you decide to remap. Because you might decide halfway through that month, oh, I really want to go and fly something else. But for me, I have a very clear plan that I like wormholes. I like wormhole space. I want to be very effective to do in wormholes. And these are all of the skills that are going to get me to where I want to be. And so I have 2 years planned out in EVEmon with remaps planned into them. So I can very effectively see whether or not a remap is going to be beneficial for me in the long run. But much more than remaps, I would highly, highly suggest that everybody get at least 4 +3 implants. +3 implants are relatively cheap, and they will really speed up your skill train. +4 and +5 implants for newer characters are going to be sometimes prohibitively expensive, and you're going to feel really bad losing them. But I almost always fly my PvP clone with a full +3 implant head, plus some gunnery implants, because at the end of the day, I'm willing to pay back the 50 million in losing my pod if I do happen to lose my pod in order to get that skill train in. In Tilda, the list of skills that I would highly recommend is to get your gunnery support skills up to about 4. So I'm talking about things like sharpshooting. Let's see here. Talking about things like surgical strike, sharpshooting, rapid firing, motion prediction, things like that. I would get those up to 4 because those are going to help you apply your damage better. You definitely want a T2 armor tank because the Uni's wormhole campus generally flies an armor doctrine. Right, and Kurua makes a good point. The Uni has a really good, cheap +3 implants program. And then in Tilsa, once you get past that point, you either want to be training into heavy assault cruisers or you want to be training into Tech 3 ships for damage dealing. If you really like Logi, then I would definitely recommend training into Tech 2 Logi, either Oniros or Guardian. Guardian is very much I wouldn't say the flavor of the month, but it's the preferred Logi, armor Logi, but I also really like the Oniros. But if you prefer DD, then get yourself into a heavy assault cruiser of your particular race, which is going to require that cruiser to 5, or get yourself into Tech 3. About the only Tech 3 that won't find a place in an armor doctrine is a Tengu, because you can armor tank a Tengu to be an ECM Tengu, but you won't see those nearly as often as a Proteus, a Legion, or a Loki. So, but again, that's a pretty decent ways off for most people. So the gunnery support skills and Tech 2 guns are going to be incredibly useful for DD folks. Cool. Okay, so anybody have any questions up to this point, or we want to move on? Yes, Kuru was exactly right. Tengus are highly recommended as PvE Tech 3s, and they're actually really good ships to fly in shield doctrines. In an armor doctrine, they're not going to be as useful. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to EFT and Pyfa. So EFT and Pyfa are the 2 most highly regarded fitting programs in the game. So give me an X in lecture.e-uni if you've ever tried to fit a module to your ship and it's giving you the message, you don't have enough power grid, you don't have enough CPU to fit this module on your ship. Right, you've already bought the module, maybe you bought, I don't know, something that, I know it's happened to me before. Yeah, just checking if we're awake. No, it's something that's happened to us all, right? But let's say that you bought a module and it was like a 50 million ISK module and you tried to fit it to your ship and you realized that, oh crap, I just bought the wrong module because it said that it was a large gun, but it was really a medium gun, and I just thought it was a large gun, so I bought it. That kind of thing can be avoided by using a fitting program to plan out your fits before you actually buy anything in the game. So I'm going to be working in EFT for this class, but I also have Pyfa open, so if any of you guys have questions about how to do a particular thing in Pyfa, we can go over that. So let's start by doing the exact same thing that we first did when we opened EVEmon. Let's go ahead and import our character API. So in EFT, if you open the program, it'll give you a little column over on the left side, and it'll give you a row of options at the top, and it'll give you a big blank screen, right? So the first thing that you want to do is go to View and go to Character Editor. Oh no, I minimized my character editor. Gotta open up the program again. Oh no, I'm not really sure where I minimized it to. That's rather unfortunate. Okay, so if you open up your character editor, you'll be able to create a new character. You can name this whatever you want to, but then you'll be given the option to associate an API key with it. Once you associate an API key with your character, then you can import that character's skills into EFT. You can do the exact same thing in Pyfa. I think that it's also a character editor, it might be listed under API keys, but this will allow you to see, can I fly this ship? And what skills do I need in order to fly the modules that I can't currently fly? So once you've done that and you've imported your API key into EFT, then you'll be ready to go. So first of all, you can design a fit from scratch using EFT, but you can also pull a fit off of any particular website that has the fit formatted for EFT. So let's do that first. Let's take a look at a fit first, and then we'll go back and do our fits from scratch. So we're first going to take a look at a ship which is one of my particular favorites in the game. So I've just posted a link in lecture.e-uni. If everybody clicks on that link, it'll send to the University Wikis page on an Atron, which is an excellent Tech 1 tackling frigate. So if you scroll down the page, you'll see that there are 8 different recommended fits for an Atron. My personal favorite fit on this page is the Atron Fast Tackle T2. It's the third one horizontally. And if you'll notice, on this great fitting template that one of our Unistas, Miranda, made for us, there's a little thing that says EFT. So you click on the EFT button on that fit, it'll expand it, and it'll give you a little text box. So select that text, and now go back to EFT. You'll see that it says, do you want to import this fit from the clipboard? It knows, right? So it knows that on your clipboard there is a particular fit from a text, and you say, yes, I do want to import it. And so then it'll open up a box, it'll open up a window that is your Atron frigate. And it will say that the current setup is Fast Tackle T2. Now, if you'll notice, you have your modules lined up by slots. So you have low slots, medium slots, high slots, and rig slots. These are the 4 basic standard slots that you're going to have on a particular fit. Can anybody tell me what the 5th kind is that you only have on specialized ships? Kronos has got it right, subsystems. And what kind of ships have subsystems? Right, T3 ships. So these are the Tech 3 cruiser ships. So those are the Gallente, oh god, I just lost it. Proteus, the Gallente Proteus, the Amar Legion, the Minmatar Loki, and the Kaldari Tengu. These are the 4 different T3 ships that will also have subsystems. We won't necessarily talk about those today. So in any of these modules, you can see a variety of different attributes about them. So you're going to see that the very first thing up there is CPU. It's the little green cube-looking thing, greenish blue, I suppose, cube-looking thing. You'll see one that looks like an atom, and that's your power grid. You'll see one that looks like a battery. That's the amount of capacitor that it takes. And then you'll see optimal ranges, the kinds of charges that are used, and all of these different kinds of things. Over on the right side, you'll see a variety of different information about ship resources. You'll see guns, missiles, and rigs. Those are the first things at the top. The little turret icon is how many turrets you have left. So we'll see that this Atron frigate has 4 high slots, but it only has 3 turret slots. So you can only fit, it has 0 missile slots, so you cannot fit any missiles on it. And we'll see that with the 3 rigs that we have on here, we have 250 rigging space left. Each one of our rigs is going to give us only a limited amount, or each one of our ships is going to give us not only a limited amount of rig slots, but also a limited amount of rig, I don't even remember what the attribute is called anymore. Rig calibration points, there we go. So on most of the time, your rig calibration points aren't going to be a huge issue. where that does come into play is some Tech 2 scanning rigs. I know that, for example, on my Helios, I cannot use 2 Tech 2 scanning rigs, even if I wanted to. Over next to that, you'll see the same things that you saw next to the modules, CPU and power grid. And it gives you a bar to show you how much CPU you're using out of your potential CPU and how much power grid you're using out of your potential power grid. Now, the thing below that is your drone bandwidth. This is very different from the amount of drones that you can fit in your drone bay. This is the amount of drones that you can have in space at a time. It's come in 3 different sizes for bandwidth purposes. There are small drones, medium drones, and then heavy and sentry drones. Can anybody tell me what the bandwidth is for those 3? Okay, so the bandwidth for those, Tasu, not quite. The bandwidth and the size for small, medium, and large / sentry drones is the same. The bandwidth and the size are the same. So Kronos has got it right. It's 5 meters cubed and 5 megabits per second. I suppose that's megabits per second of drone bay and bandwidth for small, 10 for mediums, and 25 for large or sentry drones. Okay, and then if we go below that, we'll see our defense parameters. So the first thing you're going to see is effective hit points. Who can tell me what effective hit points are? Okay, so estimated hit points with modules active. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, but Duke's is better, right? It's the amount of damage that it's going to take to kill you, not just the amount of armor plus shield plus hull that you have on your ship. For example, any ship might have resistance modules that are going to limit the amount of damage that's being done in a particular frequency or a particular type, which we'll talk about here in a second. And you might also have on your ship some active repair modules, and those, like a shield booster or an armor repairer on your ship. So those are going to be the kinds of things that you're going to be dealing with. Now, somebody said how much damage it takes to kill you if the enemy uses the worst damage type. Well, and that's not even entirely true, because you can set up EFT for particular damage profiles. Captain's got it right. Unless you tell it to do something different, it assumes omni damage. So what are the 4 different damage types in EVE? Right. Thermal, explosive, kinetic, and EM. In particular, we always like to list them in order in the same way that they are listed in order in-game, and the same way that they are listed in order in EFT. So that is EM, thermal, explosive, EM, thermal, kinetic, and explosive. These, and if you list a resistance profile to someone in a chat, you could list it like this. So for example, the ship that I'm flying right now, docked in my station, has this resist profile without any active modules on. So this is my armor resist profile, and that means that I have a 63% EM resist, a 76% thermal resist, an 88% kinetic resist, and a 55% explosive resist. Now that is without any of my active damage mitigation modules on, of which I have quite a few. Question, how do you set up alternative damage profiles? Well, that's a good question. In EFT, the best way to go about setting up damage profiles is you have to actually load the profiles into EFT. So here's the thing, is let me link you guys to a particular section of the syllabus that I'm going off of, and this will give you a really good way to step-by-step add in damage profiles for not only some of the NPC rats that you have, but for particular types of ammo that you're going to run into. So you have to go in and manually add in these data profiles to a file in the EFT folder, but it is super simple to do. And once you've added in these things, then when you click in EFT and add in the drop down for your defense, if you right click on that little defense bar, which should show your shields right now, then you can right click and select a particular damage profile. Uberzoned asks a question, do you know of a skill tree or a spreadsheet for Tech 2 items? Do you mean how to manufacture them or what skills you need to fly them? A list of required skills needed to fit all Tech 2s. Well, that's something that you can go in and do in EVEmon, the same way that we talked about before. If you go into EVEmon and you go over to your item browser, you can search for any Tech 2 module and see what you need to fly it. Now, you wouldn't necessarily want a spreadsheet that's going to show you all Tech 2 modules because there are like a billion Tech 2 modules in this game. Not a billion, but you get my drift, that there are Tech 2 armor tanking modules, there are Tech 2 shield tanking modules, there are all manner of things. And so if you wanted to just take a look at one or two of them, then that would be the best way to do it. But the next thing we're about to talk about in EFT is how to actually go about changing around your ship and how to look for different modules. So let's go back to our Atron. So let's say that I don't have Tech 2 Gatling rails. Well, right now it looks like I can fly the ship just fine, right? But if I go over to the little character window at the top right, or the character button at the top right, it should currently have selected all level 5s, but you can drop down to the character that you just added in this program with your particular skills. So if I go to Gabriel Finch, now I'll see, instead of the nice little green thing next to the character label, I'll have a little red bar. If I hover over that red bar, it'll show me what modules I cannot fit and why I cannot fit them, so what skills I do not have. Muzzy Chuck asks, why is my EFT EHP often much higher than the HP in my fitting window when I'm undocked with all the def mods on? It often differs by 10,000 EHP or more. Well, I don't know off the top of my head why that is. It could be that EFT is not calibrated correctly. Rainbow Unicorn says, in-game uses worst possible damage type to receive, EFT uses Omni. Huh. Today I learned. So that could be why. But that's the thing, is that if you go in and change around your damage profile that you're receiving in EFT, it's going to give you senses for what are some of the best cases for damage and what are some of the worst cases for damage. So I wouldn't just look at EHP from Omni damage and say, well, this is exactly what I want to be tuning for, unless you're going against Omni damage NPC rats like sleepers. You want to actually be using those different damage types to see, okay, well, I have a huge EM hole in this ship, and if I'm taking EM damage, I'm going to crumble, so I really want to average out my resists. Or, okay, I know I'm going to be ratting in this particular space going against this particular type of NPC. I really want to gear my damage to mitigate those NPCs. Okay, so going back to the character window, we can see that if we click on, or if we hover over that little red bar, it'll show us what items we can't fit. So let's assume that I can't fit small Tech 2 railguns. So I need to get rid of those from my ship and replace them with something I can fit. So if you right-click on a module that you can't fit, you can select the option that says Open Market Group. So now what we see is that in the little box above, we open turrets and bays, hybrid turrets, railguns, small. So we know exactly what category we're looking at, and down in the bottom part of that window on the left, we can see all of the modules that belong in this category. By default, the only things that are showing up are our Tech 1 and Tech 2 modules. So you'll see listed by size, we have 75 millimeter Gatling rails, 125 millimeter rails, and 150 millimeter carbide rails, or 150 millimeter rails rather. So what we can do is take a look at, okay, right now I have 75 millimeter Gatling rail 2s on there. If we go down, or rather we go up one from that, we'll get to 75 millimeter prototype Gauss gun. The nice thing about EFT is that it automatically lists modules in meta order within their particular size. So within our 75 millimeter size on these small railguns, the 75 millimeter Gatling Rail 1 is our Meta 0 module. The 75 millimeter Gatling Rail 2 is our Meta 5 module, and the 4 guns in the middle are listed in meta order. So go ahead and double click on all 3 75 millimeter Gatling Rail 2s, which will get rid of them from your ship. And then you can double click 3 times on the 75 millimeter prototype Gauss gun to re-add it to your ship. If you try and double click more than that, it won't let you add it because EFT knows that there are only 3 turret slots on that ship. Okay, so now perhaps I've evened out one of the things that I wanted to do on my ship. Is there an undo function in EFT? I believe there is not, unfortunately. So that's one way to search for modules, but perhaps you want to search for a particular module. Right now, this fit has a Warp Disruptor 2 on it, but let's say that I wanted a Scram instead. Yeah, Captain Jack, I highly suggest taking copies first, and you can do that by going into the little button directly next to the ship name. So if we look at Current Setup Fast Tackle 2, there's a little button over to the side, and you can do Duplicate. So if you duplicate the setup, you can name it something else and then go play around with it. There's no real limit to the amount of setups that you can have, and you can open up multiple setups at once. So it could be very, very easy to say, okay, here's the fit someone else gave me. It looks like a great fit, and eventually I'll be able to have the skills for it. Let me downgrade some of the Tech 2 modules to Meta 4 and see if I can fit it that way. But let's say that this has a warp disruptor on it, which it does, and we want to put a Scram on there instead. So you can go to the inner text to search box up at the top left, and you can enter SCRAM, and it'll show all of the modules that have that in their name. So the ones that are coming up are our Tech 1 and Tech 2 and quote-unquote named Scram modules. So if we wanted to put a Warp Scrambler 2 on there, we could. But let's say that we're really rich, and we don't care how much our Atron costs. So go over on the very, very bottom left, and you can see that currently we have selected Tech 1 and Tech 2, but you can also select, if there are modules of that type, Faction, Dead Space, and Officer modules. These are the higher meta modules that are much more expensive, they're much more rare, but in some cases they can be better. So let's go over to Officer mods. And let's say that I'm super rich. I want to have Tobias's modified Warp Scrambler on my Atron, because I'm ridiculous. So I could get rid of the small one, and then I could drop Tobias's modified Warp Scrambler on there. And then, holy crap, I have way maxed out power grid, right? So if you look on the power grid setting at the far right, you'll see that I now have upwards of 3,000 power grid out of the 60 that are on my ship. So that's not so good. You can't really fit that. If you'll notice, these warp scramblers, these officer scrams, are typically only fitted to battleship and above. I mean, I don't know why you'd put a scram on a carrier or a dreadnought, but I mean, hey. So you can see not only if I were rich could I put this on my ship, but also will I have the power grid and CPU to put something like this on my ship? Now, where the fun really comes into this for me is being able to check out multiple ships at once. So let's go back to our wiki page, and I'm going to give you guys a different ship, and we're going to take a look at two different ships compared to each other. So if everybody clicks on the Tornado, you'll see that there is a fit listed on the Tornado wiki page that is called Suicide Ganker. This Suicide Ganker fit has a bunch of SIBOs on it, so these are sensor boosters, and they are going to be loaded with either scan resolution scripts or targeting range scripts. And then you'll see that we have a whole bunch of image modules in the low slots. So go ahead and click on EFT, copy the EFT code, and import it into EFT. So now we have our Suicide Ganker fit in EFT. What we can do from here is take a look at damage between the two. So if you click on File, New Damage Graph, then it'll pull up a damage per second graph window. In the window on the right, the little white window, you can right-click and add an attacker and add a defender from the ships that you currently have open. So let's say we want our attacker to be our Tornado, and let's say we want our defender to be our Atron, or our target in this case. So what we'll see in this case is a damage per second graph at particular ranges. Okay? So the x-axis is going to be our range to target, I believe, and our y-axis is going to be our damage delivered. Now this can change drastically based on the velocity of particular ships, and also based on which direction they're moving. So if you see the little arrows and the circles down at the bottom, you can change the directions and the velocities of the two ships. So let's make the target velocity 100%, but let's make him go perpendicular. So now you'll see that we have a significantly worse chance to hit the guy, right? Because he's in a small ship. This goes back to what we would talk about in a gunnery class, that if your transversal is high, then you're going to have a much better chance to avoid damage from big old guns like that, especially if you're in a smaller ship. So you can open up these damage per second graphs and go nuts with them. Cool. Anybody have any questions up to this point? So the other way to go about making fits is just to do them from scratch. Light Flash says, in the DPS graph, there is nothing in the list to select, attacker or defender. What am I missing? You have to have the setups actually open at the time. So even if you have a bunch of setups saved in EFT, you have to actually open up different windows for whatever ships you want in order to use them. So they need to be open and active and have characters in them. Because that's one of the things, is that the DPS you apply with your skills is going to be different than the DPS from a level 5 character. And so it actually needs the fits open in your fitting browser in order to compare them to each other. Does that make sense? Cool. So the other thing that you can do is to make fits from scratch. So let's say that I want to make a thorax fit from scratch, right? So you can search in the top left box for thorax and it'll pull up the ship. If you have never used the program before, when you double click on thorax, it'll ask you, do you want to make a new fit for this? We don't have any fits saved. Do you want to make a new fit? So you hit yes. If you do have thorax fits already saved, then you can click on the little drop-down arrow next to the name of the fit, and it'll give you the option to create a new fit. So you enter the name of your new setup, and then you're good to go. We'll name this one class test. So now we want to add some low slots, we want to add some mid slots, and we want to add some high slots, and we want to add some rigs. You can either search for these using the little search button up at the top, or you can use the tier tree of the window up at the top left in order to find guns, in order to find a tank, in order to find E-War modules and rigs and all of that good jazz. But now you've made your perfect fit. Well, how do I get it somewhere else? Okay, well, you can either upload it directly into the game, or you can copy and paste it to somebody else. So let's say I just wanted to copy and paste it in a forum thread. You just right-click, or rather you left-click on the little drop-down arrow next to the name of the fit, and you say copy to clipboard. And that's it. Now, the next time you Control V or right-click and paste it somewhere, you will have the fit that you just made up. But let's say that I've made perfect fits for 4 different kinds of thoraxes that I want, and I want to upload them in-game. Then what you can do is you can open up the XML file manager. So you go to File, Import Export to Eve, and open up the XML file manager. This will allow you to import fits from inside Eve to your browser. So if you have any XML files saved in the correct directory in Eve, this will allow you to put them in EFT. But how do we get things from EFT to Eve? Well, we go save all to one XML file. And by default, unless you've changed pathways, this will have the correct window or the correct path, the correct file path open when you open up this new window. And it'll say save as. You can name your XML file whatever you want to, and then you can save it in that fittings window. When you go in-game, you can open up your fitting window, so the Alt-F window that will have your current ship selected. If you hit Browse, then it'll bring up a list of all of your personal fittings, and you can import them from there. So let's say I saved this fitting as all fittings. If I go to import, it'll give me a file name. So I click on file name, all fittings, and it'll show me all of the different fits that EFT saved for me, and I can decide which ones I want to input in-game. From there, in-game, you can pull them up, you can see what of them you can fit, what of them you cannot fit, and you can drag things to your quick window in your market window. So your quick bar in your market window, then you can buy all of the fits just right there from your quick bar. Clear it out, put the next fit in there, buy out everything. So this is a really great way to transfer files back and forth to EFT. Cool. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, the last thing that I want to talk about, I forgot to talk about it a little earlier, but I want to make sure that I cover, Uberzoned, I will get back to that, I promise, is how to look at a particular item. So let's go back to the Tornado Battlecruiser, okay? So what I want you to do is to take a look at the 1400 millimeter gallium cannon on that Tornado. So if you right click on it, you can say show info. So if you click on show module info, it'll open up a new little window that has the damage, has the cycle duration on a particular cannon. It has all of these different attributes that are valuable to have. But if we go back to that 1400 millimeter gallium cannon, we right click on it and we say show market group. And we go back to the Tech 1 and Tech 2 versions. If you click on the gallium cannon from this market view, you're going to get different attributes, because once you put it on a ship, the ship might be bonused for particular things. Your in-game skills that you imported with your API are going to change how much damage or the kind of tracking that you have, or maybe overload penalties. Any of these things are going to change from the pure market version of the module to how the module works in conjunction with your ship and with your skills. So right-click, show info on something. It will be useful in the market view, but it will be even more useful if you actually do it on your ship, because it'll give you a chance to see how it's working on the ship and not just how it's working in theory. Okay, so Uberzoned asked, how do you buy trick again? Well, when you have a fitting, you can drag the fitting to your quick bar in the market. G, thank you much. Thank you very much for coming. We've reached the end of the class itself, but I am happy. So Uberzoned, if you go to the market, so click on your market, you'll have two tabs, Browse and Quick Bar. Don't apologize. No question is a bad question. So if you drag fittings into your bar, you can very quickly buy everything that you want without having to manually search for every module. Alrighty, so we've reached the end of the class, but I am happy to answer any questions you guys might have about EVEmon, about EFT, or any of that kind of thing. For those of you who are in Ivy League, I would highly recommend that you check the calendar, because there are some cool things going on in the very near future. And if you guys wouldn't mind, any of you who attended the class, if you would let me know what you thought, let me know what I can do better, all of that good stuff in the forum thread, which is there. Question, is there an easy way to put missing skills found in EFT into your skill plan in EVEmon? Well, one of the things that you can do is if they're missing skills for a ship, you can go to that ship in the ship browser in EVEmon and add them in. But another thing that you can do is get fit from Battle Clinic, and I'm going to go ahead and put a gigantic disclaimer right here. EVEmon is made by the same people who do the Battle Clinic website, but most of the fits that you find on Battle Clinic are going to be less than good. So you generally want to play around with the fit in EFT first, but Physgum, like I said earlier, probably the best way is like Rainbow just posted right there. You can export a loadout in XML, and EVEmon will allow you to load out. Now, most of the time you're going to be importing those loadouts from Battle Clinic, which again, do with caution. But the other way to do it is if you make sure that you have your character selected for the particular ship. If you hover over that red bar, it'll show you what skills you don't have. And then you can go into EVEmon, search for those skills, and add them to your skill plan. The other thing that you can do is you can right-click anywhere in the window, or you can right-click on specific modules, and you can change particular skill levels to see what it'll do for you. So for example, I've been looking recently at a lot of logistics fits. There is a huge difference between the amount of capacitor you're going to have with Logi 4 and Logi 5. So you're going to, if I clicked on an Oniros fit, for example, and I right-clicked on the repers, it would say change affecting skill. And I could change the logistics skill, which is a skill that affects how those repers work, to level 5 from level 4. And it would show me that, oh, now suddenly I have a whole lot more capacitor than I would have with logistics level 4. Whereas if I change something on the ship itself, like energy management or energy systems operation, and I change those from 4 to 5, it wouldn't give me as much of a benefit. So playing around with fits, not only are they going to fit on my ship, but what skills can I manipulate here and there to actually make this really useful? If you go and mess with those things in EFT, it can help you craft an even better EVEmon plan to maximize the skills that you put first in order to get the most benefit. For example, you could open up a really good DD cruiser fit and check and see, okay, well, is rapid firing going to give me a better advantage than sharpshooting in terms of how I apply my damage? Is getting, for example, medium projectile weapons level 5 going to help me more than a different support skill? You can just play with those things not only in the character editor in EFT, but actually on the fits themselves by right-clicking and say change affecting skill in order to see really what you're going to get from a particular ship. Yes, Rainbow Unicorns. I have Amar Cruiser 5 and then Logi 5 coming up. Long trains. Anybody have any more questions? Cool. I'm going to stick around in this chat channel for about another 5 minutes or so, and I'll stick around in Mumble as well. If anybody has questions about anything, third-party program related or in-game fitting related or anything like that, I'm happy to answer them. But again, please post on the forum thread to let me know what you would like to see out of this class were it to be taught again, or what I can do better. And thank you guys for coming out. Again, I would highly recommend that you check out the calendar if you're in Ivy League, and I will see you guys later.